And the New York Times is asking a hotly debated question. Should you track your teen's location?
Yes.
The Pew Research Center found 16% of parents choose to use cell phone monitoring apps to monitor their teens' locations. The majority of parents do not. Psychologist Lisa Damour writes, plenty of adults balk at the idea of remotely following an adolescent's movements, while others question why any loving parent wouldn't. Lisa Damour, a CBS News contributor, joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
We've heard Gayle already weigh in.
Yes, we know where Gayle stands on this issue.
Yes.
And some of us at the table already track our kids' movements through their phones.
That's me.
Yeah. And me too, actually, but mine aren't teens yet. But you raised some really interesting questions. Is this damaging to the relationship or potentially damaging to a parent's relationship with their teen?
It can be. So we have research that tells us that if kids feel like their privacy is being invaded, it does harm to the relationship. We also see situations where it becomes a cat and mouse game, where kids are leaving their phones places, turning their phones off, putting more energy into trying to get away from their parent than trying to keep themselves safe. We also have the problem that the data is sort of vague. I have seen kids get into trouble for swinging by a band home to pick up something with a friend. Mm-hmm. And then they come home and their parent is really angry and nothing has gone wrong. I also know lots of teenagers who are doing all the wrong things exactly where they're supposed to be. So it's a limited source of information, and we have to recognize that.
You know what, Lisa, I really do believe people who have nothing to hide nothing. So I'm thinking, if there's a choice between privacy and security, I'm always going to go for security. And I admit I'm a bit nosy too, but most of the time it would really for me be about security. Why is that wrong?
It's not necessarily wrong. I think it has to feel like your teenager is doing it with you. You don't want it to be something your teenager feels is being done to them.
So we should tell them?
So absolutely. It should definitely be above board, and then it can be a partnership. You can say, look, if I'm not hearing back from you, and I'm worried, I'm going to check where you are. If your friends want to go somewhere you don't want to go, you can tell them I've said no and that I could find out. The flip of it is, and this is a rational perspective, there's a lot of value to learning to manage on one's own, right? And parents who don't track, I encourage them to say, look, I'm not tracking you. When you're not with me, you are in charge of your safety. You can call me if you need me, but I don't want there to be any ambiguity about who's responsible.
One enterprising youth bought a temporary cell phone so that they wouldn't have to use their iPhone and be tracked.
Yes. They are a motivated bunch.
Yeah. So I think it encourages independent thought. Let me ask you this: when do you stop? If you are doing it with your children, when then do you taper off?
Well, I think you should sort of have a planned expiration date. I think there should be some sense that this is not an open-ended arrangement, and I think you should keep checking in with your teenager about what it means, how it's being used. I think certainly by 17, 18, parents should be ready to really renegotiate. A lot of parents track their kids who are at college. There's probably good reasons for this, but at the same time you think, well, it's one thing for your roommate to know you're sleeping over at your boyfriend's dorm. It's another thing for your dad to know you're doing that.
Okay, you can track me, just don't judge.
Just don't judge. But here's the thing. Tracking, it's like if you pull this thread, it gets to all of the big topics in parenting teenagers. Trust, safety, independence, privacy. So these are the tough negotiations of parenting young people. And what I like about this topic is that it gets parents and teenagers to the negotiating table, right? There's no right answer, there's no one way, and there's no single decision in any family. These are ongoing conversations.
So ongoing negotiations. And you say raising teenagers comes with guaranteed discomfort.
Yes.
So true.
Comes with the territory.
So true. Thank you very much, Lisa.
You bet.
We always like having you here.